it's very much hidden. Some of the, like Fort Congaree doesn't exist anymore, at least not in its physical form. It's all archaeological remains underground. So you can't go to the park and see the Fort Congaree, but it is there. And the landscape is a big part of why human settlement happened into areas that are both the 12,000-year history park and down in Congaree National Park. We didn't have the same types of human settlements as they would have had in the area of the Timberman Trail and Casey, mainly because we're on opposite sides of the river, and the side of the river that has that's Lexington County, that is Casey, going down into Calhoun County, geologically very different from what we have in Congaree. I'll call it the south side of the river, is much higher in elevation than the area right next to the river on the north side. So the Congaree floodplain, where Congaree National Park, it's about 4 miles wide in many places. It is a very wide floodplain. It's very extensive, and that goes all the way from the confluence with the Watery River all the way up to Columbia itself. You don't start getting higher elevations until you get to the city of Columbia. And even just outside of Columbia, there is still a fairly wide floodplain. If you've driven along I-77, going north or southbound, right before you cross the river or right after you cross the river, you have that, on the Richland County side, you have that really wide area where the water treatment plant is, that when you get a pretty big flood, it fills in. It is underwater. And that's really the start of that widening of the floodplain until you get down to the confluence with the Watery. And it would have been that way down past that as well. You don't see that as well today because Lake Marion was created in the mid 20th century. So that whole area has really, it's now a big lake. But the reason it's a lake of such size is because the floodplain there is fairly extensive. But you get to the north side, the south side in Lexington and Calhoun counties, and the geology changes dramatically. You have much higher land there. The floodplain, if there is floodplain, tends to be very, very, very narrow. So it doesn't get the extensive flooding that that we would see on the Congaree National Park side, but there is still floodplain, and it might not be as extensive, but we do have some very similar forest ecosystems between our two parks. So if you're walking on the Timberman Trail, if you were to walk through that forest environment, you would see bald cypress trees. These are these very tall trees. They have a very wide base. The base kind of swells out as you get down to the bottom of the tree. We call that buttressing. It's actually an adaptation that those trees have made to living in an ecosystem that is underwater a good deal of the time. The soil is more saturated and therefore unstable. And so those trees have adapted to making a way to stand even when the soil becomes hard to stand in. They also have these very unique root structures called knees, where it looks like a stalagmite in a cave, but it's actually just a part of the root system that's actually coming up out of the ground. And scientists are still trying to figure out exactly why those trees have done that. I actually might be able to pull a picture up. So John, I might have you switch me over here for a second. So actually I need to look something up real quick. Realize I didn't have one of my drives hooked up, but it's a very unique type of adaptation that these trees have made to figuring out how to survive in a wet, saturated environment. So you see those both in the Timmerman Trail, 12,000 History Park, and you see them at Congaree National Park. Now, the trees you would see at Timmerman Trail, they are going to be a lot younger. They are not going to be the same age as the trees, as some of the trees you would find at Congaree National Park, because the area around the 12,000 History Park has a much more extensive history of human habitation, especially in the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. So the forest you see there is greatly different than the one down at Congaree National Park. John, you popped me over to had you popped me over to share?
Yes, you're the host.
Okay. So I'm gonna bring a picture up real quick so you can kind of see what some of those cypress trees look like. Got a good one right here of one of our older ones. I just got to get out to it. But trees in the Congaree floodplain, in some instances, they are as much as 700 to 1,000 years old, possibly even older. But it's difficult to get an exactly accurate date of a tree when you don't core it. So you can see right here, this is one of the bottoms of one of our cypress trees. This tree is well over 130 feet tall. So you have to be really far back to try and get the whole tree. And with a forest canopy, it'd be almost impossible with this tree. But this is actually the state champion bald cypress tree. This is the bottom of that state champion bald cypress. And you can see it's a big tree. This tree has a circumference of 26 feet all the way around. And you can see those knee structures all the way around the bottom. So those knees, scientists are still trying to, get an exact determination of what they do. Some think that it might have to do with what we call oxygenation. So at one point, scientists thought they might be about, breathing, acting like a snorkel. Just like if we were out, snorkeling in the ocean, we're not necessarily diving all the way down. We're kind of keeping our head right near the surface, and we have a little tube popping up so we can still breathe and keep our head underwater to see all the cool stuff underneath. But if you remember your high school biology classes, trees don't breathe through their roots. Trees breathe, they do respiration through their leaves. So they're bringing in carbon dioxide and exhaling oxygen. But trees still do need oxygen, and especially their roots. And in a floodplain environment, the soil has very little oxygen in it. It's especially when it's flooded, it's anoxic. There's almost none in there. So some scientists think that these trees have adapted to putting their roots above ground so they can be exposed to oxygen and get oxygen down into their root systems when there isn't any in the soil. There's also the theory that they're about stability. That one does seem to be very much part of the case. That one doesn't have too many people who argue against it. But the other reason, oxygenation, respiration, still kind of gets debated here and there, but respiration has pretty much been thrown out the door, but oxygenation they're still working on it to prove it. But these trees, because they're so well adapted to this environment, they survive. And cypress trees are a very well adapted tree to an environment that has a lot of water in it, so they don't rot as easily as other trees that get exposed to water constantly might. They're also insect resistant. Most of this happens once these trees reach about 200 years old. So they're very unique trees. But because of those properties, the reason we don't see as many trees as old as these is because most of them were cut down. these bottomland forests that had these just magnificent, gigantic bald cypress trees, you don't see them as much anymore because over the period between the late 19th and the up to the mid 20th century, these forests pretty much got leveled because cypress was such a highly sought after building material for both housing materials, shingles, siding, docks and piers, because you could take the posts, the piles made of cypress wood, drive those down, and they would last for seemingly ever. And even boats, because cypress wood in boats makes for a great boat, doesn't rot. You're not going to have that rot that you would get on other kinds of wood. You don't have to treat it as much. So you don't see these forests as much anymore. And that's why Congaree is such a treasure, is because it does have those trees still there. And if you know a little bit of the Congaree, 12,000 Year History Park, you know that area was very much cleared out, especially in the mid 19th century when they were building the earthworks to defend Columbia. So that area would have been basically cleared back so that they would have lanes for shooting. They would be able to see their opponents coming and be able to hit them from a long distance. And that requires taking down all those trees. Plus that land was farmed and all kinds of other different human activities that have taken back that forest. But it has been regenerating and recovering. It's probably, in some cases, some of those trees are getting to be around 150 years old in some locations of the 12,000 Year History Park. So if you see what that forest looks like, you can then come down the river to Congaree and see what a forest even older looks like. And I did see a question that got popped up, get to it. Someone, Ben had asked, are there Tupelo trees in the 12,000 Year History Park floodplains as well? And how do you tell the difference between a Tupelo and a cypress tree? And that's a great segue, because that's where I was going. Yes, there are Tupelo trees in the 12,000 Year History Park. They are also a very common floodplain tree because they are also very well adapted to living in that environment. They also have that big flared buttressed base like a bald cypress tree does. The bald cypress tree, though, you can see here has kind of this, I call it a ridged bell. So it has these kind of ridged lines going down the base of it. And a Tupelo tree doesn't typically have that. It typically has a smooth bell. I've actually got a Tupelo tree kind of right off to the far side of this cypress tree. So this is a Tupelo tree right here. You can tell it kind of has that swollen base. It's not as pronounced as others, but you can see it's not as ridged. It's much more smooth as compared to the cypress tree. And its roots, it does try to keep its roots above the surface as well, but they don't produce knees. It looks kind of like ropey coils of roots all along the surface of the forest floor. We're not sure if it's trying to oxygenate that way as well, but it does try to keep it fairly close to the surface, if not above the surface, during floods. So a couple more people who are going to jump in here. So we have those two types of tree. Oh, and how to identify a Tupelo tree. Besides the bases, the leaves on these trees are much different. The bald cypress tree is actually a deciduous conifer, so it is related to both. It is similar to pine trees in that it has needles and cones. That's how it reproduces. It produces cones. That's where its seeds are. And its leaves are it looks kind of like a fern-like needle, but they are needles, just like a pine tree would have. But unlike a pine tree, it's not evergreen. It'll drop its needles every fall. So if you go out right now and start looking at those cypress trees, they're getting all rusty red, and give it a month and they'll be bald. hence the name bald cypress. They are bald for the wintertime, and then once spring comes, they'll pop those leaves, those needles back out. Tupelo trees are just straight deciduous trees. They are broadleaf trees, so they have kind of this ovate leaf. The different types of tupelos we see here in South Carolina are the water, the black gum, and the swamp tupelo. They have, instead of cones, they will have a fruit. We call them tupelo drupes. The water tupelo, they actually make really big drupes. They look kind of like olives that fall down to the forest floor. So if you're walking in Congaree or possibly 12,000 Year History Park and you see what looks like olives all over the forest floor, those are the tupelo drupes from the water tupelo. And then both the black gum and the swamp tupelo, they have smaller ones. They look kind of like little blueberries, but they're still kind of oval in shape. So they do have a fruit that they produce. Are beavers an issue in Congaree? I wouldn't call them an issue. So they're part of our natural environment. We have them. They create dams and they do take down trees, but it's not to the point where they're destroying a forest ecosystem for us. They're there, and they are doing what they do. Beavers do create environment and habitat for other animals. So whereas they can be destructive in some places, in Congaree they're perfectly natural, and we don't see them creating a major issue for us. But if you go down Cedar Creek or walk on some of the trails that go by waterways, you'll see evidence of where they've been at work. Not just those two types of trees, but Congaree has over 80 different species of trees. We are a very diverse environment when it comes to tree species. And the 12,000 Year History Park, that landscape probably would have had many of those similar types of trees. The upland areas probably would have seen both loblolly and longleaf pine. You would have seen some of the larger oak species like cherrybark and shumard. Swamp chestnut oak are also very common in these types of environments. Persimmons, pawpaws, lots of different types of holly trees. So we have both deciduous holly, what we call possum haw, American holly. You may have even found, it's more shrubby, but it's called Yopon holly, which would have been a very important plant for the Native American inhabitants of this area, because they would have used Yopon leaves to make what they called the black drink. Yopon leaves tend to be very high in caffeine, and so it's not going to be like, my coffee right here that's going to keep me awake, but it has such a high concentration of caffeine. It was used more as a purgative. So it was used to cleanse your system, possibly for religious ceremonies, religious purposes, and things of that nature. So you would have found Yopon in those more upland areas. So we have very similar ecosystems, just of different sizes and densities. But both of our locations have seen the effects of human habitation. Congaree National Park has people living in it, hundreds, and winter. So, bring up another picture here for a second. Let it load. It's starting to rain outside. It's big. But that's actually me standing on the feet of a couple of my coworkers, and I'm looking into that tree. I'm looking inside that tree, and they make a really important habitat. Some of the reasons that some of these trees still stand is because they are hollow. The loggers who saw them figured they wouldn't be worth anything, so they let them stand. And thankfully, because they let them stand, we still have them today. Congaree National Park has about 11,000 acres, what we would still call virgin or near virgin bottomland hardwood. Tom asked he asked the Congaree bottomlands seem an ideal habitat, a place for bear habitat. Though now the area is small and fragmented. A friend recently saw a mother and 2 cubs in the lower Savannah River. Got a clue on when the last bear was seen in the park. So in the park itself, the last time we've had a documented evidence of one in the park, I believe, was sometime in the late 80s, early 90s. And they did find a bear track on one of the trails. However, a couple of years ago, we actually did have one of our park neighbors who's on one of the hunt clubs nearby, has a trail cam, has a game cam on his feeders, and he got a picture of a black bear up at one of his feeders. And the forest you see in the background of that picture, that is the park. That's Congaree. So they probably pass through more frequently than we know. I wouldn't say they're common, but they probably do pass through. We just don't see them very much because the park is such a vast area that is, only really accessible by boat or by foot. And so bears are good at hiding. We don't see them very much, even when they are out. So I would say they probably might pass through, a couple maybe every year, but we just don't have a definitive answer on that. Like I said, the last time we have definitive proof of a bear in the park was late 80s, early 90s. People say they see them in the park, but they say they only caught a fleeting glimpse of something black moving through the underbrush, and it's more likely that's a feral hog than it is a black bear. But yeah, we do know they are in our area. It's just we don't see them as common as one might think. But very, very good question. Very good question. Just to kind of keep on with that, it is ideal bear habitat. There are a lot of things that the bears can eat, by the way. Plenty of mast on the forest floor. We have over a dozen types of oak trees that you can find in the park, from water oak, willow oak, laurel oak, all the way up to those bigger ones, the shumard, the overcup, the cherry bark, swamp chestnut. Plenty of food for them to eat. So it would be decent habitat. There's a lot of places for them to hide. So that's another reason why we think they could be in there more frequently than we know, because there's plenty of food for them, but we just don't have any hard proof that they're there as frequently as they might possibly be.
John.
So
John,
as far as other plant communities go, one of the reasons, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there are some signs of bear that have been seen in the Heritage Preserve, and we assume that
Mhm.
that they do habitat, the 12,000 year history park, but I'm not aware of any specific sightings.
Yeah, they are seen more often on the Calhoun County side across the river from us than they are seen on our side. Um, People see them on their game cams over in Calhoun. I hear about it at least once a year that someone sees a bear over there. Um, so it's another reason why we think it's possible that they may be in the park as well, passing through. You just don't get a chance to see them. So yeah, they're probably there's probably a good deal of passage between the upstate areas in the mountains where I've seen them here in South Carolina, down to towards the coastal plain, near the coast itself. Like Myrtle Beach has a fair population of black bear down there. So um, Jennifer actually asked a question about she asked about English ivy, but I'll kind of cover this over to invasive plants as a whole. Um, so as far as invasive plants go in the park, um, we work with our a regional team. They're actually based in our park, but they're not an actual park resource itself, called the Southeastern Coast Invasive Plant Management Team, and they will try to get projects going if an area is easily accessible to take out some of our invasive plants. Last fall, we did a poll on the western side of the park for um, Perilla frutescens, also known as beefsteak plant. Um, so it just depends on what kind of plant they're trying to get at, because different plants have different methods of actually being able to get rid of them. Um, so um, our that team does try to do some stuff this year. We just weren't able to do anything really, just because volunteer projects were much more curtailed, because typically these projects bring a lot of people in, and we don't want to have a lot of people near each other, just because of COVID concerns. But I'm sure in the future we will be trying to do some more invasive plant pulls here and there. But um, keep an eye out. We'll definitely post about volunteer days. But we do have a number of unfortunately invasive plants, some of which I do see at the 12,000 Year History Park too. Things like Perilla frutescens. I also see things like the um, Chinese and Japanese privet. They're also pretty um, they're also pretty prolific. We do try to take care of privet in our park as much as we can get teams out there. Um, that one typically requires a combination of what we call cut stump and herbicide. So they'll have to cut the tree, and then they'll have to spray an herbicide on it. It's a lot of work, and carrying a backpack sprayer is not easy, especially when the time to do it for a specific plant is in the middle of the summer. We also do have some Chinese wisteria, which is beautiful. It looks gorgeous, but it is unfortunately just a very aggressive vine plant. It'll take over, and it does cause problems with some of our trees, because vines in and of themselves, they'll use a tree to climb up. And so you come to the park, either one of our parks, and you'll see vines going up trees, and that's normal for a vine. But when you get these very aggressive ones like Chinese wisteria, when they get up into the crowns of the trees, actually uh, give it more wind resistance. And so those trees will actually fall much easier, because they see so much more resistance to strong winds. So when you get, major thunderstorms or tropical systems come through here. Big task, and certain ones we have things like herbicides that we have to use that make it a little more specialized. And so, yeah, unfortunately, sometimes we can't get help on certain species, but things like beefsteak, perilla, and other ones, sometimes we can get some good gum. And we've been working to kind of clear back some of the sweet gum in certain areas, especially where we're trying to reestablish longleaf pine. So yeah, lots of those trees. That's one of the reasons why we do that, because we're trying to protect the habitat for a lot of these native trees. And one thing that you may hear a lot about, especially because they finally have found it up in up near Charlotte, are some of those plant pests like emerald ash borer. We thankfully have not seen any emerald ash borer in our park yet, but tree diseases like Dutch elm disease and chestnut blight, they've taken out so many trees in the Northeast, even down to here. They don't do as well in very diverse forests because it's harder for the disease to spread. So we actually have some pretty impressive elm trees in the park that, because they are spread out, they aren't in these really tight groups like in other forests. Dutch elm disease, if it got down here, would probably not do so well. So, that's one reason why having a diverse forest is really important, because it does help. Not always. I mean, the Great Smokies is a very diverse forest. Unfortunately, chestnut blight hit them really, 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 really hard. There are very few of those large American chestnuts left in the Northeast. But as we allow these forests to kind of do their thing, as we protect certain plots of land, over time, those forests will, continue to regenerate. When we allow certain natural processes to take place, like we do prescribed fire in our park. It can be a little harder to do prescribed fire at a place like the 12,000 year history park, because it's so very close to populated areas. But when you have those natural processes that are allowed to take place, it allows these forests to regenerate and actually be able to become the really impressive old growth forests eventually that we used to see here in South Carolina. So I'll open it up for any questions. We're at 11:40. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to, you can pop yourself off mute too if you would like to ask a question, or type it into the chat. I'm more than happy to answer questions either way, but I'll open up the floor.
John, I think the flooding situation at 12,000 Year History Park being in a floodplain, there are a lot of similarities with what happens in Congaree National Park. And we know from the biggest, probably most severe recent flood in 2015, a lot of, it's very, very easy to imagine that environment during most of its history being flooded several times. So I think the past similarities to the national park probably were a little more pronounced, but like you say, you can go in there and see some of the low areas where these cypresses exist, and that environment encouraged similar kinds of wildlife that were in the national park.
Right, and the geology of our area, if you were to, step back in time 12,000 years ago, it would have looked a lot different because the river was not necessarily in the same place that it is now. Um, the 12,000 Year History Park is below the fall line, and it is so it probably has seen some change over time. Maybe not as much as, like, say, the Congaree floodplain down where we are, because the geology there is different in some ways, and it's on the opposite side of the river. But yeah, it has definitely changed over time, and floods have been a major part of why it's changed. It's been the river course has changed multiple times over 12,000 years. So a couple questions real quick. Pat asked about wildflower populations. We do have wildflowers. We've got, a fair amount, depends on the time of year. So you come out in the springtime, you'll see things like butterweed, and I think so. Oh, we got might see some Indian pink, and milkweed tends to be more of a fall plant. So does the cardinal flower. Also, some of our nodding ladies, tresses, orchids. So we have some nice wild flowers that we'll spot in there. So just depends on the time of the year that you get to come out and spot them, but they are there. One of the most beautiful ones we do have right on the margins is our Adamasco lilies. They are out there. They're absolutely gorgeous. And also some of our we do have azaleas that we'll see also in the springtime. So some flowering bushes and everything. And I believe that, Tom, the first invasive plant I mentioned was Perilla frutescens, also known as beefsteak plant. And it is, you also hear it called Japanese basil. You can cook with it. You can eat it. The reason it's called beefsteak is because it kills cows. If cattle eat it, it'll cause them to get very sick. So Jennifer asked, tegus. We have not seen tegus in the park. We know they're in the area, but they aren't something we have seen yet. Obviously, now that they've been spotted, we do keep an eye out now if we see something. But as of right now, we haven't seen any tegus. Spotted lanternflies, that's actually not one that Stacy. I'm sorry, Stacy. Spotted lanternflies, that's actually one I haven't heard of. So it's not one that I believe we're on the lookout for at the park. But 12,000 Year History Park, John, you know anything about spotted lanternflies?
No, not specifically.
Okay. So yeah, not one that I've heard that we've been looking for. So I have to ask our resource manager to see what they know about that. And then Jennifer, she's the one that I saw the name, but I put the wrong question with. Pawpaws are kind of one of those native fruit bearing trees that they're pretty prolific. We just don't get to see the pawpaws so much down at Congaree. Down at our part, is because unfortunately once they hit ripe and they start falling off the trees, the feral hogs start to get to them real quick. So I've gotten to taste them in a couple places. They're delicious. That crosses between a mango and a banana is how I describe them, but they're very tasty. And we do have some fairly large pawpaw trees down in Congaree. And I have seen smaller ones in the 12,000 Year History Park. I'm sure they probably have some decent sized ones in there too. But they are there. And geckos, yeah, I have heard that we're getting geckos here in our area now. So haven't seen any at the park yet. But if they're in the Sand Hills area, I'm sure they'll probably start making their way down towards the park as well. So if you do come down to Congaree National Park, just kind of a word about fruits and mushrooms too. You are free to collect certain amounts. Typically, it's up to a quart of, I think, either one of them a day. So pawpaws, black raspberries, mushrooms. However, the one stipulation is you have to eat them in the park, so you can't take them home with you. So you can bring the mushrooms out, clean them, and cook them at the campground if you're camping overnight, or at the picnic shelter, but you can't take them home with you. So that's one of the stipulations that we have to follow, that comes out of the federal regulations. But they're there. You can, if you see a pawpaw and you wanna try one out, it's nice and ripe, go for it. I definitely would clean it first. You got some water with you, but yeah. But yeah, those are there to be tried if you so desire. The black raspberries this year were amazing. I found a good bunch of them this year, and I think it was mainly because we unfortunately didn't have a ton of visitors on the trail where they typically are most prevalent, and so people weren't picking them as much. So they were there in more abundance than I typically get to see. But alligators are in the park, just like they're at 12,000 Year History Park. I've seen a couple of good sized ones there in Congaree Creek, but they are at Congaree National Park. They're just not as prevalent because we just have so much enclosed area that they just don't come up there all that often. If we ever see them deep in the park, it's in places like Weston Lake, Wise Lake, where there's more open space. But they're more common down on the 601 corridor, down at Bates Old River, and also out on the river itself. So, but we're in their habitat zone, so we'll see them occasionally. They are there. They are there. But no, we don't see too many big ones, but we do know they're nesting there too. We have seen down in the eastern end of the park, young alligators. So so they are nesting in our area. So they do have a nesting habitat, which is a good thing. It's they're still on their way to recovery. They're much better than they were 20, 30 years ago. I remember when I was a young kid, they were endangered still. They were considered endangered. And now they're much more prolific. So, any other questions, either in the chat or over the microphones? All right. Well, thank everyone for thank you all for coming out, joining us virtually, and hopefully we'll get to see you. Oh, go ahead, John.
Switch the hosting over to me if you
want. Oh, sure thing. Let me see. Remember how I did that. There we go. All right, you should be the host now. And click a button.
Okay. I wanted to say that we are going to be talking about other landscape features in some of our programs coming up. And is this slide visible, the website? Can you see that?
No.
No, John.
Okay, let's see. All right.
Yes.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to say that we are going to be talking about landscape. Of course, you can't separate cultural and natural history. They are intertwined. And that's why we want to not shortchange discussions of nature. If you stay tuned on our website, we have posted our upcoming programs. On December 3rd, we're going to be talking about the origins and history of Congaree Indians. Chris Judge from University of South Carolina, Lancaster, and he's going to be touching on, I'm sure, some natural resource features of the 12,000-year history park area that attracted the prehistoric and historic Indian groups. And then on the 10th, on the 8th of December, we'll be talking about Fort Congaree establishment in 1718 and some of the environmental conditions that helped to set that up, some of the natural features of the landscape. And on the 10th of December, we're going to be talking about, and also with Congaree National Park and Lexington County Museum, the settlement of the area, Saxe-Gotha, and Congaree Creek area compared to the lower Congaree Basin at Congaree National Park. So stay tuned for those. Check those out at our website, and we'll be sending out invitations to that. If you, my email is jhjameson@yahoo.com. If you want to send me a special message, I'll make sure you get that information about when those sessions are occurring. Upcoming on November 19th is our Battle of Congaree Creek virtual tour. So we hope you can join us then. And on the 1st of December, Tuesday, we're going to be talking about trade in the 18th century and sort of the life of a typical household. And we'll be doing that in conjunction with Lexington County Museum. So please tune in for these programs. Let us know what you think. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks, John, for your presentation and for your time and efforts. We sure appreciate it. Congaree National Park is probably our most important partner in addition to some of the cultural museums in the Columbia area. So thank you, John, and I hope we'll see you later on some of these programs that I've mentioned.
Yeah, thanks for having me, everyone. And
does anyone have any questions for me or anyone else? Okay, well, thanks, John, again. Thanks, everybody, for attending. We'll see you next time. Our next tour, like I say, is on the 19th, then December 1st, and then those others I mentioned that we're talking a little bit more about the landscape. So take care, everybody. Have a good weekend and stay safe.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye-bye.